so the topics that we'll cover today would be the heat shield, which I'll cover, and the structural parts of the rocket. That refers to the structural strength of components and all the other parts. And we'll also cover some of the controls, like how is rocket controlled during mid-flight and all of that things. Okay. So I'll begin with the re-entry. Of course, you see that rocket goes up and then of course it will come down. Initially, the rockets weren't designed to go achieve orbit, so we had only suborbital hops. Suborbital hop means that your rocket goes up and then it comes down in a parabolic trajectory or in a pseudo parabolic trajectory, which is a part of an ellipse. Okay, so but now since your rockets are capable of going to orbit, so you'll also have to re-enter from orbit, and current rocket designs are also capable of leaving Earth entirely. So you also have the requirement of re-entering the Earth's atmosphere from a this lunar orbit or a solar orbit, all of that. Okay, so any of you, what difference do you see between entering the Earth's atmosphere from say Mars, or entering the Earth's atmosphere from low Earth orbit like the space station? कोई एक्सप्लेन कर सकता है क्या इस चीज़ को? लाइक स्पेस स्टेशन से अर्थ में एंटर करना और मार्स से अर्थ पे एंटर करने में क्या डिफरेंस है? मतलब ऑब्वियसली बात है, डिफरेंस है, बट इंजीनियरिंग वाइज तुमको किस तरीके से प्लान करना पड़ेगा?
In orbit we should maintain some velocity and we need to decrease that, so it will cause so much air drag and so much of heat.
And
through Mars, I think it will not be that much as it is in orbit. Because
no.
velocity will be somehow less, I guess, than orbit.
Actually, no. The velocity while entering from Mars and higher orbits is much higher than while entering from lower Earth atmosphere. See, because you certainly have to have some orbital velocity, but along with the orbital velocity, you will also have to have some potential energy. All right. So the potential energy that you have in a low Earth orbit is much lower than you have in a Mars orbit. Think about it like this: like if your spacecraft is at an infinite distance from Earth, and it is at zero velocity at that point. So once it begins falling towards Earth, then it will gain some kinetic energy. And if you know that the escape velocity from the surface of Earth is 11.2 kilometers per second, so that means that any object that has the 11.2 meter per second worth of kinetic energy, that will escape Earth to infinity and would be at a zero velocity at a point that is at infinite distance from Earth. All right. So if your object is at an infinite distance from Earth and it begins to move towards Earth, so by logic, how much velocity should it acquire while falling in this gravitational well of Earth? So
11.2.
Yeah, exactly. It will acquire 11.2 kilometers per second worth of velocity. So any of the asteroids that's coming from asteroid belt or any of places like that, and spacecrafts entering from farther orbits like Mars or interplanetary orbits will acquire about 11.2 kilometers per second worth of velocity. And the spacecraft that are instead coming from the lower Earth orbit or somewhere near to Earth, they will have much lesser velocity upon re-entering, right? Because they didn't had that much potential energy to begin with, and although they had some velocity to orbit, right? But still, you need velocity to orbit even in solar orbit. You cannot just stay still in solar orbit. You have to orbit around the sun. So you will have kinetic energy there also. You have kinetic energy here also. But the total change in potential energy is much more greater in coming from interstellar orbits. Okay, so all over the kinetic energies of re-entry are much greater in coming from higher orbits. So that's basically one of the difference that you'll notice in things like space shuttle, which was meant for re-entering from the lower Earth orbit, and in suppose the Apollo space capsule, which was meant to re-enter from lunar orbit. All right. So because Moon is much farther away, so while it re-entered, so it generated much more heat, and it had to be made in such a way that you account for all of these things. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, but we have potential due to Mars also. So,
What?
so the velocity will not be as it is at infinity. I mean, we need to consider the potential energy not only due to Earth and also due to Mars. So um, it
Also,
will not be similar as infinity, a rocket coming from infinity.
no. It will be similar of as a rocket coming from infinity, because you will be leaving the gravitational field in gravitational influence sphere of Mars. See, what I'm talking about is that at a sufficient point, like we say that gravity acts to an infinite distance, right? But we know that in practice that's not true. Basically the effects of gravity overtake each other. Like at a certain distance from Mars, where the gravity of Mars is stronger than the gravity of Sun, you say that you have entered the sphere of influence of Mars. Okay, that's called the sphere of influence. Currently, we are in the sphere of influence of Earth, and there comes a point when your spacecraft has the gravitational force of Sun more dominant on it than the gravitational force due to Earth. And at that point, you say that your spacecraft has left the sphere of influence of Earth. All right. So basically, you have these points, and while you are escaping from Mars, you know that Earth and Mars are at a very far distance from each other. They are not very close. So once you escape Mars and you begin a coasting phase, much farther away from Mars, so you won't be in its sphere of influence. You will have some kinetic energy, but that doesn't mean that it will significantly decrease due to the effects of Mars. Although there will be effects, of course, but those won't be significant. All right. So at that coasting phase, you will still consider yourself to be an infinite distance from Earth, infinite distance away from Earth, while you are in a transfer orbit from Mars to Earth. All right. And then you will have some kinetic energy, and that kinetic energy will not be associated with orbital energies of Mars. Instead, it will be associated with orbital energies with respect to Sun, because you are that at that time you are outside of sphere of influence of Mars and in the sphere of influence of Sun. And the major force that's acting is the gravitational pull of the Sun. All right, you understand?
But even if we re-enter from Mars to Earth, there will be a time where like हमें Mars से आने पर भी एक पहले तो एक orbit पकड़नी पड़ेगी Earth के around, then
हाँ
we can enter.
हाँ
So it
नहीं,
won't it be same
isn't
as
necessary.
like
It
entering
isn't
from
necessary.
space station?
It isn't necessary. You are not required to attain an orbit around Earth to re-enter Earth. Basically, क्या होता है कि if you are sending an spacecraft, suppose let's take the opposite scenario. You are sending a spacecraft from Earth to Mars, okay, to land on Mars. Say, okay, so you launch a spacecraft. It has enough fuel, and then it coasts and coasts. It drops the stages, and then it has less and less fuel with it. Okay, and then it eventually reaches Mars. Now, if you'll consider that your spacecraft won't have enough fuel to actually establish a circular orbit around Mars and decrease its this kinetic energy that is it has acquired while falling in till there. Like all the way it's falling in, it was falling in the gravitational influence of Mars. All right, so it would have gained some kinetic energy at that point. At which point you are saying that it should have established an orbit, and
Yeah.
it would have effectively neglected all of that build up kinetic energy. All right. So, but to just counteract all of that built up kinetic energy, you will have to spend energy from your fuel. And
Yeah.
spacecrafts generally don't have that much fuel at that point because they have already dropped all of their stages and they are left with very less this maneuverability. All right.
Okay.
So instead of achieving an orbit around other planet while before re-entering, what they instead do is they just plunge into the atmosphere directly. That was the same case with the Apollo mission. You had the very massive Saturn V launcher, but it lost all of its fuel on the path to the moon. And what came back was only the crew capsule that was just the bare top of that rocket.
Okay.
All right. So you don't establish an orbit, although it would have been much safer if you would have first established an orbit around the say your moon before entering there, but you can't do that. You don't have that much of fuel.
Okay, okay.
All right. Okay, question. Okay, so I'll move ahead. So yeah, also while re-entering, you can understand that re-entering is basically an interaction with the atmosphere, and as you interact with the atmosphere, it can exert forces upon you. So you can also plan your re-entry. Basically, it's not just like a stone which is just hurled upon the earth, and it will just fall without any control. Re-entry can actually be controlled, and our spacecrafts that re-enter actually do control their re-entry for certain reasons, because as you know that re-entry generates a lot of heat. All right. So and your spacecraft needs heat shields and heat tiling to counteract all of that heat. So further we'll also see about heat shields in this lecture itself, but you know that covering whole of your spacecraft with heat shield is a difficult business. You cannot cover whole of your spacecraft with heat shield, right? Because you'll have the holes for engine, you'll have the holes for like say if you have a space shuttle, then you'll have to have cargo bay which should open to deploy cargo, right? You cannot just coat it with heat shield, and you'll have to have windows, you'll have to have all sorts of things. You have antennas which cannot be covered inside of heat shield. So only a certain part of your spacecraft is capable of being covered by heat shield. All right. So you must control your re-entry in such a way that your heat shield plunges first into the atmosphere, and your spacecraft just counteracts all of those effects of heat. All right. So basically, in the this picture, in the lower left, you can see how the re-entry phase of this space shuttle works. So basically, you'll have space shuttle that's orbiting Earth, and it usually orbits in this state. That means its belly is towards the space, and its tail is towards Earth. See, so I can also ask that why does this space shuttle orbits it this way in Earth, orbits in this way in the orbit? So anybody has any idea कि space shuttle आखिर इस तरीके से orbit क्यों करता है पलट के? मतलब उसकी टेल अर्थ की तरफ पॉइंटेड रहती है और उसका जो ब्लैक पार्ट होती है उसकी बेली वो स्पेस की तरफ पॉइंटेड रहती है.
मे बी कॉज कि बाहर जो स्पेस में कुछ भी जो मूव कर रहा है तो वो आके हिट कर सकता है, तो बेली से वो सेव हो जाएगा, लेकिन बाहर से नहीं होगा। तो जब वो ऑर्बिट करे तब तो उसके उसके लिए वो बेटर है।
No, actually anything that would
Maybe
be
to
hitting you
reduce
would
the
not
speed.
to reduce your speed.
Like अगर ज्यादा ट्रैक फील होगा ऐसे तो स्पीड जल्दी कम होगा।
नहीं, generally you
Space
don't
shuttle
have.
is used. Space shuttle is used to transport cargo to ISS. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think to dock it correctly, I think they'll orient like this.
नहीं, तो डॉकिंग प्रोसीजर तो बस 2-3 मिनट का होता है, वो तो मतलब तुम कभी भी फ्लिप कर सकते हो स्पेशली को. तो देखो जैसे तुम लोग में से कुछ लोगों ने बोला लाइक स्पेस डेब्री से बचाने के लिए, तो वो रीज़न नहीं है, क्योंकि स्पेस डेब्री तुमको ऑब्वियसली बात पता है कि it will hurt it will strike you from the front instead of striking you from the upper side. It won't if a space debris is in orbit, so it would tend to strike you along the path of your orbit, not from tangential to the path of your orbit. Okay. बात क्या है एक्चुअली, मैंने अभी भी जस्ट तुमको बताया दैट यू कैन नॉट हैव दिस कम्युनिकेशन एंटीनास बिलो योर हीट शील्ड. बताया था ना?
हाँ बताया था।
हाँ, तो बेसिकली जो कम्युनिकेशन एंटीनास होते हैं वो हीट शील्ड से तुम कवर नहीं कर सकते. सो योर कम्युनिकेशन एंटीनास आर ऑन द टॉप ऑफ द व्हीकल, and therefore once the vehicle reaches orbit, so you have to align it in such a way that you can have a clear communication with ground. That's why you just let your heat shield point up in space and rather point your antenna towards ground.
तो मतलब फिर री एंट्री के वक्त क्या कम्युनिकेशन लॉस्ट हो जाता है?
हाँ, री एंट्री के समय कम्युनिकेशन ब्लैकआउट होता है एक पर्टिकुलर फेज के लिए. ब्लैकआउट्स कई बार होते हैं, लाइक इफ योर स्पेसक्राफ्ट जस्ट hides behind some celestial body. जैसे जो अपोलो स्पेसक्राफ्ट था, it was established in orbit around moon, and there was a point when it went behind moon. All right. So at that point, there was no communication with Apollo capsule, and that was called a blackout phase for Apollo capsule. So
मतलब
basically,
लेकिन रीएंट्री के वक्त होता है वो तो इंटेंशनली होता होगा ना, मतलब उनको पता है कि हाँ हो रहा है, होने वाला है,
नहीं, तुम
क्योंकि
इंटेंशनली नहीं होता,
स्पेसक्राफ्ट सीधे
उनको पता जरूर रहता है, बट इंटेंशनली नहीं होता, वो
हाँ
उसको कंट्रोल नहीं कर सकते, दे कैन नॉट मेंटेन
ठीक है।
कम्युनिकेशन, ठीक है ना। सो इस मोड में ऑर्बिटर ऑर्बिट कर रहा होता है, एंड देन टू डी ऑर्बिट, ऑफ कोर्स इट विल हैव टू फ्लिप एंड देन फायर इट्स इंजन. So while firing its engine, it reduces its velocity in orbit, reduces its kinetic energy, and therefore the orbit plunges into the atmosphere with this maneuver. एंड आफ्टर सर्टेन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, जब स्पेसक्राफ्ट हमारा उस ऑर्बिट में थोड़ा सा और आगे बढ़ेगा, देन इट विल कम क्लोजर एंड क्लोजर टू अर्थ, ठीक है. देन इट फ्लिप्स इन दिस वे, ऐसे ये इस सर्कुलर मोशन में फ्लिप होता है और अपना हीट शील्ड को एटमॉस्फेयर से अलाइन कर लेता है, ठीक है. और जैसे तुम ये देख रहे हो, ये इस हेडिंग में आ जाता है 40 डिग्री टुवर्ड्स द डायरेक्शन ऑफ मोशन. सो इससे क्या फ़ायदा होता है कि नन ऑफ द कंपोनेंट्स अबव विच आर कवर्ड इन दिस वाइट प्रोटेक्टिव मटेरियल are in the direct path of the wind. Okay, so ये इस तरीके से अपनी हेडिंग बनाता है, and then it re-enters. तो re-entry वगैरह जैसी चीज़ें होती हैं, and also it can turn during re-entry because your space shuttle has wings, therefore it can just turn towards one way and then towards other way to adjust its heading and all of that. Basically, one pilot, one space shuttle pilot once compared your space shuttle to a flying brick. It doesn't has a very great flight characteristic. Basically, it's just like flying a brick which has attached wings. So if you'll have a plane that's much more capable of if good flight, and space shuttle isn't really meant for flying. It's just meant to maneuver a little bit such that it is capable of landing upon Andrews Air Force Base in America, at which was the default landing site of this space shuttle. Okay, so it has very bad flying characteristics, but still you can adjust its path somewhat using its wings and tails and all of this. Okay, so to bleed off extra velocity, the spacecraft also the space shuttle also didn't actually followed a very straight flight trajectory into the atmosphere. Instead, it tended to curve in left and then right and then left, going in an S shape that you can see in this photo. So basically, I couldn't get a very well photo of this event that space shuttle did, but basically it went in a zigzag way to bleed off extra velocity. I mean, the more you stay in the atmosphere, the lesser your velocity will become, right? You will decrease your velocity due to drag. So the spacecraft did this to just encounter more atmosphere in its path, so that its velocity is lower when it reaches the ground, and then it eventually reaches ground, and then it this expands its parachute, and it lands over there. Actually, while entering from the atmosphere, you have quite high amount of velocity. Planes do not usually travel at that velocity. Okay, so even when you reach the this airstrip, your plane didn't bleed off that much velocity that you wanted to have it bleed. तो स्पेस शटल को मतलब पैराशूट्स यूज करने पड़ते हैं वहाँ पे स्टॉप करने के लिए, मतलब इतना तेज वेलोसिटी से एंटर करता है वो कि तुम्हारा एयर स्ट्रिप तक पहुँचते पहुँचते भी उसकी सिग्निफिकेंट अमाउंट ऑफ वेलोसिटी बची रह जाती है. सो इट्स नॉट लाइक ए प्लेन. और स्पेस शटल को लैंड करने के लिए यू नीड टू हैव सम ऑफ द लार्जेस्ट रनवेज इन द वर्ल्ड. तो सो एंड्रूज एयरफोर्स बेस का जो रनवे है वो शायद लार्जेस्ट है, सबसे लॉन्गेस्ट है, 1.6 किलोमीटर का ऑलमोस्ट. सो उस पर ये लैंड करता है स्पेस शटल. इन कंपैरिजन IIT कानपुर रनवे का लेंथ किसी को पता है क्या? तुम लोगों को ये तो पता है ना कि IIT कानपुर डज हैव अ रनवे.
हाँ वो पता है. ये पता है.
उसकी लेंथ नहीं पता होगी आई गेस. इट्स जस्ट 400 मीटर.
4 किलोमीटर
ना 4 किलोमीटर नहीं, 400 मीटर्स.
500 मीटर.
400 meters. It's 400 meters long, और एंड्रूज एयरफोर्स बेस का रनवे 1.6 किलोमीटर लॉन्ग है. सोचो मतलब इन कंपैरेटिवली मतलब 4 गुना ज़्यादा ऑलमोस्ट. समझ रहे हो? So our IIT Kanpur runway is meant to land these planes, smaller aircraft like Cessna and Saratoga sort of planes. But these runways have to be long in order to land bigger planes, which have much more momentum while coming down. All right. So और एक और चीज़ जो कि तुम नोटिस करोगे कि ये जो फोटो में तुम लोग देख सकते हो, लाइक जो रीएंट्री होती है वो कभी हमेशा ही स्ट्रेट अवे नहीं होती एटमॉस्फेयर के अंदर, इट फॉलोज ए ट्रेजेक्ट्री. सो क्या होता है कि जैसे कभी तुम लोगों ने पानी के ऊपर पत्थर फेंका है, कई लोगों ने ट्राई किया होगा, उसको चिक्का फेंकना कहते हैं हिंदी में. तुम पत्थर फेंकते हो, वो पानी से के सरफेस से टकराता है एंड देन इट बाउंसेस बैक एंड देन इट अगेन पानी के सरफेस से वो टकराता है, फिर से वापस बाउंस बैक करता है. पता है ना ये चीज़?
हाँ
स्किपिंग स्टोन्स.
एग्जैक्टली यही होता है री एंट्री के समय भी. योर स्पेसक्राफ्ट जस्ट हिट्स द एटमॉस्फेयर एंड दैट एटमॉस्फेयर इज मच डेंसर देन स्पेस ऑफ कोर्स. सो वो जस्ट वहाँ से स्किप हो जाता है एटमॉस्फेयर में से, एकदम इसके पर उसके जैसा, पत्थर के जैसा. तो ऐसा मतलब पत्थर पानी में तो तुम कई बार करवा लेते हो बिकॉज योर हेडिंग इन वाटर इज मच मोर शैलोअर. मतलब क्या होता है कि तुम उतना ऊपर से पत्थर नहीं डालते ना पानी के अंदर, मतलब समझ रहे हो? स्ट्रेट अवे एकदम डाउनवर्ड्स नहीं डालते तुम, ऐसे एकदम चपटा फेंकते हो पत्थर पानी के ऊपर, तब वो उतनी बार स्किप करता है. पर स्पेसक्राफ्ट क्योंकि बहुत ज़्यादा हॉरिजॉन्टली नहीं आ रहा होता एटमॉस्फेयर के अंदर, इट्स कमिंग ऑलमोस्ट वर्टिकली, सो उतना ज़्यादा स्किप नहीं करता, 2-3 बार स्किप करता है एंड देन इट एंटर्स एटमॉस्फेयर. समझ रहे हो? तो बेसिकली मतलब तुम्हें उससे थोड़ा थोड़ा आइडिया लगेगा कि हाँ कितनी ज़्यादा वेलोसिटीज़ की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ. लाइक कि एटमॉस्फेयर खुद एक्ट्स लाइक ए, तुम्हारा क्या कहते हैं, एटमॉस्फेयर खुद तुम्हारे स्पेसक्राफ्ट को रिबाउंड कर देता है ऊपर की तरफ. ओके. सो उसके अलावा फिर अपोलो मिशंस का जो कैप्सूल था उस सब की भी फ्लाइट पाथ और ट्रेजेक्ट्री थी, एंड दे आल्सो हैड सम सॉर्ट ऑफ एरोडायनेमिक पैरामीटर्स एसोसिएटेड टू विद देम. तो उनको भी तुम पर्टिकुलर हेडिंग और ओरिएंटेशन में डाल के उनका फ्लाइट पाथ को कंट्रोल कर सकते थे, बट दे वरंट केपेबल ऑफ being controlled as efficiently as the space shuttle, क्योंकि उनके पास obviously wings नहीं थे and they usually tended to stop with the help of parachute and drogue chutes. ठीक है ना? लेकिन अपोलो स्पेसक्राफ्ट का जो वो था री-एंट्री स्पीड्स, that was much greater than that was space shuttle, right? Because Apollo spacecrafts are coming back from the moon and space shuttle was coming back from low Earth orbit. So now you can understand that an object coming back from lower Earth orbit has to do this much, like going sideways and, in the atmosphere and deploying a parachute while landing on the runway. So what would a spacecraft coming from the moon like Apollo capsule would have to do? They couldn't have the maneuverability to perform all these actions, but their parachute was very big. So they use drogue chutes and then parachutes after that. So drogue chutes are basically smaller parachutes that are meant to provide some resistance to spacecraft while at higher atmosphere. But the main parachutes are deployed much later when you enter the atmosphere actually. Okay, any questions?
They finally land on water.
Space shuttle landed on the airstrips, so of course on land, but Apollo capsule landed in water. It planned its orbit.
हाँ मतलब लाइक अगर लैंड पे मतलब लैंड पे लैंड करा रहे हैं तो बेसिकली लाइक एक्सीडेंट्स होने के चांसेस ज्यादा रहते होंगे शायद.
हाँ वैसे नहीं, ऐसी बात नहीं है. लाइक तुम पानी की बात कर रहे हो एंड यू आर एक्सपेक्टिंग दैट कि कोई चीज़ जब पानी पे जाती है तो टूटती नहीं है, ठीक है, बट एट दैट वेलोसिटीज वाटर एज वेल एक्ट्स एज ए सॉलिड सरफेस. मतलब तुम कभी पानी IIT कानपुर आना तो स्विमिंग पूल में अपने पेट के बल कूद के देखना है एक बार, ठीक है. तुमको पता चल जाएगा दैट वाटर कैन आल्सो कॉज डैमेज टू स्टफ्स. दर्दनाक होता है पानी भी. मतलब एकदम भी ऐसा नहीं है कि ग्राउंड पे स्ट्राइक करना किसी चीज़ का, अगर मान लो 10 मीटर पर सेकंड की स्पीड से भी कोई चीज़ टकरा रही है तुम्हारे वाटर से, तब भी इट विल कॉज इनफ डैमेज. तुम जिस सिचुएशंस की बात कर रहे हो पानी में ऑब्जेक्ट्स के जाने की, वो तुम मतलब बहुत कम की बात करो, लाइक तुम्हारा फोन गिर गया पानी के अंदर तो वो टूटेगा नहीं, ऑब्वियस सी बात है, क्योंकि बात सही है कि बहुत कम वेलोसिटी पे था. But at higher velocities, water can also cause damage to structures. समझ रहे हो ना? So, any other question?
Why it will bounce back? I did not understand that one. Water is a different case. I guess that is due to something. There will be surface tension due to surface tension.
No, it's
That
not
is a
due to
different
surface tension.
case.
No, it's not due
But
to surface
he,
tension.
here it is.
It's just due to compression of water under your object. Your stone compresses the water under it, and then as the water rebounds, your stone gets bounced back. Surface tension is a property of water to bound to other atoms, right? If you put something inside water, so surface tension would tend to cause a force that will pull that object inside of water instead of pushing it out. Surface tension never pushes something out.
There is an example that some flies will stand on water, that is due to surface tension.
No. They are actually, their feet are made of waxed some sort of thing, right? So the water, because of the property of surface tension, holds on to itself, and because their feet is hydrophobic, so their feet cannot enter water, and that's why it acts in sort of a net around their feet. It's not water actually pushing against their feet. It's actually water pulling on itself and not being broken up by their feet, which is hydrophobic.
Yeah, but its surface will act like a spring type of surface, like some flexible type of surface. Will act like that. Yeah, so both sides it will be flexible.
No, I don't think that the skipping effect on water is due to surface tension. Although if it is, then it's also not the case that air doesn't have surface tension. Air also has some.
Yeah, but their air density is very less, and so surface tension will be negligible, I guess,
No,
at higher
it's not
atmospheres.
negligible. It's not negligible. And what I am telling you, that aircraft rebounds on striking atmosphere, it's actually not just a theory. It is an actual observed effect. Okay, so it actually happens. And now, why does it happen? Is a different story. I don't think that I can actually explain you.
Yeah, I am thinking that air resistance will be acting opposite to velocity direction. So
Yeah.
until it reaches, I
So
mean,
air resistance won't be ever greater than the. I don't think air resistance can change the direction of motion. All right. If you have less velocity in a certain direction, then your air resistance would not tend to increase your velocity in the opposite direction, because then in the opposite direction you
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah. So it can't go back. I think it can't change its velocity direction, so it can't go back due to air resistance.
I actually can't explain the exact effects that are involved in this. So you can search about it and also tell me on the Discord. You guys are actually very silent on that server. If you find this the particular reason why the spacecraft rebounds, then please tell everybody on the server. But I'm just telling you that it is an observed real physical effect. It also happened to this X-15 supersonic plane that I was telling you about, no, hypersonic plane X-15 that was made by NASA, right? A couple of lectures back. So it also happened to this plane. Basically, what happened that plane. If you watch that documentary Apollo, that was on Neil Armstrong, not Apollo 11, the first man, yeah, the first man. So if you watch First Man, then you will see a scene in that Neil Armstrong was flying the X-15 fighter jet, and he took the X-15 fighter jet in this higher atmosphere, very high. So basically, what happened that he lost all control from the spacecraft because the air around him got very thin, and therefore the control surfaces of the spacecraft couldn't act properly. And when he started to descend into the atmosphere, Then instead of plunging into the atmosphere and regaining the control of spacecraft, his spacecraft rebounded from atmosphere, and he wasn't able to get the control of spacecraft until he plunged again into the atmosphere. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll proceed with that. You please do find the exact mechanics of this thing while re-entering. Okay. Yeah. So your spacecraft can generate lift during re-entry. That was expected, as I told you, that if you have a spacecraft that's plunging into air, so what will happen that your air will offer some drag to that spacecraft, right? But your spacecraft would be made in such a way, your heat shield would be made in such a way, it would be curved, and your spacecraft would also have an offset balance. Like this white point that you see is actually the center of mass of your pod. It's made in such a way, like last day also I was telling you that your pod is made in such a way that it orients itself perfectly while plunging into the atmosphere. Okay, so you will have your center of mass offset from the axis of this spacecraft. So it will be as such that it orients itself in this way. So what happens that the air coming towards the spacecraft, more air actually deflects downwards than the air deflecting upwards. Okay, so the more air that's deflecting downwards will cause the spacecraft to generate a lift in upwards direction, and that would actually slow your descent into the atmosphere. Okay, and you actually want a slower descent into the atmosphere. You can understand why, right? Because if you are plunging into the atmosphere and you just reach the thicker layer of atmosphere quite early in your descent. Okay, like when you had very high velocity, and with those high velocity you reach the lower layers of atmosphere, then you know what will happen. First of all, you will cause much more drag to your spacecraft and thus much more heat, and also you will cause much more this acceleration and the deceleration in the spacecraft. And basically deceleration is the negative acceleration, and the astronauts inside your spacecraft will feel that acceleration and will feel uneasy and may also pass out or die. I've also told you that human body can't take high accelerations, right? So you try your space while re-entering, you try that your spacecraft generates some sort of lift such that it bleeds off most of its velocity in the higher atmosphere, and then while entering the lower atmosphere it experiences a lower velocity. All right. Okay, okay. Any questions? समझ में आया ना ये चीज कि स्पेसक्राफ्ट ड्रैग कैसे प्रोड्यूस करता है? लाइक बेसिकली एयर जो आ रही है, तुम्हारा स्पेसक्राफ्ट को तुम इस तरीके से ओरिएंट करते हो कि जो नीचे डिफ्लेक्टेड एयर है वो क्वांटिटी में ज़्यादा हो इन कंपैरिजन टू द एयर दैट इज डिफ्लेक्टेड अपवर्ड्स. ओके, खाली अपने स्पेसक्राफ्ट का सेंटर ऑफ मास को थोड़ा सा ऑफसेट कर देते हो तुम एक्सिस से. सो द स्पेसक्राफ्ट विल टेंड टू एक्सपीरियंस अ लिफ्ट इन द अपवर्ड्स डायरेक्शन. समझे ना? आगे बढ़ो ना, कोई प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं है ना? हेलो हेलो, इज एवरीबॉडी डेड?
Yeah.
ओके, तो हाँ, तो री एंट्री के भी दो ट्रेजेक्टरीज हो सकते हैं. लाइक अभी अभी मैंने तुमको बताया कि यू कैन कंट्रोल योर री एंट्री, सो यू कैन हैव टू पर्टिकुलर ट्रेजेक्टरीज while re-entering. You can have ballistic re-entry or you can have aerodynamic re-entry. Ballistic re-entry is basically if you will just launch a ball and then that ball comes down to ground, it will follow a parabolic path. So similarly, while if you launch a rocket vertically, then it will come down to ground while following a parabolic path. And that parabolic, when the rocket is following that parabolic path in its process of re-entry, then it's called a ballistic re-entry. And aerodynamic re-entry is nothing, just that you are controlling your spacecraft's re-entry to sway farther from that ballistic path and easing out your trajectory in such a way that you feel less g-forces while re-entering. Okay, just carrying out all of this in actual life that bleeding of your velocity while you are in upper atmosphere and then plunging into the lower atmosphere only when you have lesser velocity. This is called the aerodynamic re-entry maneuver. So basically any projectile motion or your spacecraft that's hitting directly Earth. Suppose a spacecraft is coming from Mars, so it won't establish an orbit around Earth, and it would directly plunge into the atmosphere of Earth, right? So that would be called a ballistic re-entry. While in contrast, aerodynamic re-entry would be the spacecraft that's in lower Earth orbit, and then it deorbits and then enters Earth. Okay, so basically ballistic re-entry would have higher deacceleration. Okay, and it would also have one more problem, because it would have lesser amount of atmosphere to slow it down while re-entering. So when it reaches the ground, it will have much higher velocity than your aerodynamic re-entry maneuver. Okay, so like you have spacecrafts that have gone to Mars recently, the Perseverance rover. Many of you might have heard about the Perseverance rover, right? किसी ने सुना था कि परसिवरेंस रोवर के बारे में? हम लोगों ने पोस्ट भी किया था।
Yeah.
सुना था।
हाँ, तो what it used was, मतलब वो एंटर करता है and then it uses parachutes to slow it down, and then it has to parachutes are also not enough to decrease its speed to almost zero. No, first it uses its heat shield. Okay, so heat shield will decrease its velocity somewhat. Then it uses parachutes, and then it uses a rocket sky crane, right? It used 3 stage while re-entering. So basically, this is what's called plunging into a planet's atmosphere, and if this can also occur while you are coming back from Moon, say Apollo spacecraft. So basically, you directly plunged into the atmosphere of Earth with these spacecrafts. Okay, so that is the ballistic re-entry procedure. You will experience much higher deaccelerations because you will slow down to safe landing speeds in much lesser distance, and also you will have to deploy much more resources to slow you down. You won't be able to slow down with just your parachute or with just the heat shield. Okay, and then the aerodynamic re-entry is the normal re-entry that I've told you. You will experience less g-force in that situation, and you can have lesser design modification for that. Like मतलब तुम्हें उतना strong aeroshell वगैरह बनाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, उतना strong compartment बनाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है अपने pod का. Aerodynamic re-entry if you are wishing for aerodynamic re-entry. All right. और उसके अलावा कभी कभार ऐसा होता है कि it's not in your control that your spacecraft enters aerodynamically or your spacecraft enters ballistically. Okay, like sometimes you also have failures, you also have aborts. So in the case of abort, usually what your rocket would do is follow ballistic re-entry, because जिस केस में तुम abort करते हो तो तुम्हारा spacecraft तुम्हारे main rocket से अलग हो जाता है, and then it has little to no control over its trajectory. So in that case, it will follow ballistic re-entry procedure, and it would be much more uneasy to astronauts sitting inside of that. Okay. कोई और क्वेश्चन? हेलो, हेलो, कोई क्वेश्चन?
नहीं।
ओके, मतलब अभी तक तो मैंने काफ़ी कुछ एक्सप्लेन कर दिया है. आई होप दैट तुम लोगों के पास कुछ क्वेश्चन होता है अभी तक, क्योंकि उतना भी इजी नहीं है ये चीज़. बट चलो मैं आगे बढ़ता हूँ. ओके, सो बेसिकली while re-entering, as I've told you that you encounter heat. That's the heat of re-entry, and many of you would just expect that the heat of re-entry is from the air that's pushing by your spacecraft, and because of friction that air heats up and your spacecraft experiences the heat of re-entry. ऐसा तुम लोग एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे थे ना?
Yeah. It would be definitely a significant contributor.
हाँ, बट एक्चुअली क्या होता है कि जो स्पेसक्राफ्ट होता है वो सुपरसोनिक स्पीड्स पे लैंड नहीं कर रहा होता है, समझ रहे हो? जैसे तुम्हारे जो प्लेन्स होते हैं, यू हैव सुपरसोनिक फाइटर जेट्स एंड ऑल ऑफ दीज। तो इनमें क्या होता है कि द एयर ब्रशेस पास द फ्यूजलाज एंड द मटेरियल, एंड द फ्रिक्शन ऑफ एयर कॉजेस तुम्हारा क्या कहता है हीट ऑफ दिस, आई विल नॉट कॉल इट री एंट्री बट जस्ट कॉजेज हीट। ओके, तो लेकिन स्पेसक्राफ्ट के साथ ऐसा नहीं होता। एक्चुअली स्पेसक्राफ्ट्स आर नॉट एंटरिंग एट सुपरसोनिक स्पीड्स इनटू द एटमॉस्फेयर, they are actually entering at hypersonic speeds. Okay, matlab much faster than the speed of sound, around 7 point, you as you can imagine, 11.2 kilometers per second. 11.2 kilometer per second is how much times of the speed of sound? Speed of sound is just 330 meter per second, and it would be quite multiples of speed of sound, right? 11.2 kilometer per second. So spacecrafts during re-entry will have hypersonic speeds, and at these speeds, the air around the spacecraft that the spacecraft plunges into can't have enough time to just get clear of that area while plunging. Okay, so I think that you can see my cursor, right? You can see my cursor. Hello.
No, we can't.
No.
Okay, so
Yes, now it's visible.
Yeah, now it's
okay.
Yes, now it's
So basically in the left image, you can see that if the spacecraft, the wind, the air that the spacecraft hits along its trajectory, so the spacecraft is so fast that the air doesn't even have the time to get clear of the spacecraft and move sideways. So instead of getting clear of the spacecraft and moving sideways, which causes friction, it compresses in front of spacecraft rather, and it is basically as something like the spacecraft is hitting an air molecule and just bouncing it back into the atmosphere. So what this causes is a shock wave. Okay, these are shock wave. I've also sent you some resources about the shock waves, that what actually they are and how they are produced, but this will cause a shock wave. Okay, so what will happen, that the spacecraft will hit the molecules of air and then throw them in the front instead of just getting them around it. Okay, so this won't cause friction on the spacecraft. Instead of all of those air molecules will tend to get piled up in front of your spacecraft. Okay, at a certain distance. So this causes the re-entry shock of the spacecraft, and it's actually this shock which causes the most amount of heat during re-entry. As you know that when you adiabatically compress air or any gas, then it gets heated up, right? So this is the similar situation, and this happens while re-entering. The air that you have compressed in front of your spacecraft will heat up adiabatically, and will actually heat up to such an extent that it will begin to form plasma instead of just your uh, normal ionized gas. It will form full plasma, and although some amount of gas will leak out of sides and cause frictional heating, but most amount of heat is produced due to this compression shock actually. And therefore your spacecraft needs to have the maximum amount of protection, the maximum amount of heat shield right on the side, which usually plunges into the atmosphere. It has less this insulation on the part that experiences frictional heating. Okay, so on the right image, you can see that this is the view outside of a spacecraft that's re-entering. So people have gone up there and then they have come down and they have seen the effects of re-entry through their own eyes, and they have also captured those effects of re-entries. So this is one such effect you can see in this image. So this was one capsule that was entering into the atmosphere, and one astronaut just captured the effect of this plasma outside of the window. Okay, so here through the perspective of this image, you actually cannot see this shocked plasma. Okay, you can see this. It's basically in this picture on the right side. It's this part, that the plasma that is around the top half of the spacecraft, because the windows that the astronaut must have taken this photograph through, are on the upward side of the spacecraft, right? You cannot have windows on the heat shield. It's obvious, right? So this is the frictional plasma that's here. He's not actually photographing this compressed plasma. Okay, कोई problem? I'll proceed. Hello?
अभी तक तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं.
Okay. So I'll also now talk about heat shields. What are heat shields actually? So जैसे तुम समझ सकते हो, heat shield भी कई तरीकों की होती होंगी. Like I told you that you require lesser amount of heat shield on the upper half of your aircraft that's not actually encountering the shock plasma, and you require less on the part that's experiencing frictional heating. Okay. So basically, what are the types of heat shields that are used on the spacecraft? Okay, so you have insulation blankets. You see, this is the space shuttle, and this has different different coloration. First of all, that you will notice that it has different coloration. It has some white parts, it has some black parts, it has some gray parts. Okay, so all of these are heat shields, because although the spacecraft doesn't experiences as much heat through frictional heating as it experiences through compression heating, but still it experiences enough heat that if this frictional plasma just encounters the metal of the spacecraft, the fuselage, it will melt it. You know that this compression plasma is around 5,000 to 6,000 of degrees Celsius, while this frictional plasma would be only around 1,000 Celsius to 1,200 Celsius. Okay, so still your spacecraft needs to have insulation on each and every part while re-entering. But the only thing that changes is that the amount of insulation changes all over the spacecraft. Okay, so there are many types of insulations that spacecraft uses. So you can have insulation blankets, you can have insulation tiles, you can have reinforced carbon-carbon, you can have ablative heat shields, and also you can use regenerative cooling while cooling your spacecraft. Okay, so I'll talk about it in detail with respect to what each of these terms mean in the upcoming slides. So I'll talk about insulation blankets. So this is the space shuttle, and these white parts that you see, these are actually the insulation blankets. Okay, what is they are actually is that you take some sort of foam type of thing. Normally they would take this fiberglass foam and then cover it with aluminum foil and other materials and make it durable, and you know that they package it properly. So basically it's only used on the places which experiences heat below 649 degrees Celsius. So if your spacecraft, all of these parts that where this insulation blanket is used, will only experience heat that is below 649 degrees Celsius. Okay, so you can use them at that places. So the इनका यूज करने का फायदा क्या होता है कि दे फर्मली होल्ड ऑन टू स्पेस शटल. आई मीन दैट मैं तुम्हें आगे बताऊंगा कि जो टाइल्स होती हैं, जो दूसरी टाइल्स लगी हुई हैं, दे आर एक्चुअली क्वाइट ब्रिटल एंड दे विल टेंड टू फॉल ऑफ द स्पेस शटल. बट ये जो ब्लैंकेट होता है, इसको तुम अच्छे से स्पेस शटल से चिपका के रख सकते हो और इट डजंट यूजुअली फॉल्स ऑफ, और इसको लगाना वगैरह भी आसान होता है. ठीक है, तो तुम ज़्यादातर जगहों पे कोशिश करते हो कि तुम ये ब्लैंकेट को यूज़ करो instead of using tiles. ठीक. And also the problem of this antenna communication, that's also solved with this white blanket. This can let your communication pass through it while your tiles cannot. Okay, so and these blankets are also easier to maintain. Now तुम लोग पूछोगे कि maintenance की क्या ज़रूरत है, but space shuttle was meant to be reused, right? It was meant to be made as a reusable vehicle that could be as easy to operate as an aircraft. Like your aircraft just lands and then you refurbish it somewhat, then you refuel it and then launch again. Okay, so space shuttle was meant to be used in such a way, and therefore the heat shields, all of the heat shields that you used on space shuttle were meant to be easily replaceable and then easily maintainable. Okay, you cannot have destructive heat shields on top of your space shuttle, which makes you to just scrap off all of the heat shield material and then re-engineer whole of the thing. So basically you must have to have easier maintenance on space shuttle, and they tend to give a look like a blanket. You see, like they look it's that it's whitish blanket. On the lower side you can see that how the internal material of this insulation blanket is, what it's like. So basically you see that it's just fibrous ceramic battling the fiberglass, and it's just coated with metal foil. That's all it is, and some sorts of thing that will give it strength. Okay, this metallic fabric and all of these things. ठीक, so मैं आगे बढ़ता हूँ फिलहाल. Then there are insulation tiles. So these are insulation tiles. All of the black parts that you observe on this space shuttle, they are insulation tiles. All right. So they are basically made of silica ceramics. Silica is sand. Okay, so sand is just processed in such a way that they forms ceramic, and basically it's an amazing material. If you heat that material up, it has such a low rate of conduction of heat that actually you can hold it while it's hot, right? So you see this woman, she is holding a heated ceramic tile. It is a similar tile that is used upon the space shuttle, and basically she can just hold it in her hands. Many of you might have seen this video. It is a screenshot from a YouTube video from NASA. So the uh, rate of conduction of heat is so low in these tiles that you can just hold them with your bare hand and you won't feel burned, or you won't feel heated. So they are amazing basically, but the main problem with them is that they have to have air inside of them, right? Because they are insulator, and their insulation property is just because of the air that it encapsulates inside of the material. Okay, so basically they are very fragile, and if this woman who is holding this tile, she just tries to just crumble this tile with her hand, she can crumble it with her hand. Okay, it's just like holding a paper square. Okay, so and if she tries to crumble that cube of this tile, then she would definitely burn her hand to maybe 3rd or 4th degree burn. All right, so these tiles can withstand a temperature of 1200 about 1200 degrees Celsius. So all of the parts of the spacecraft that experience this amount of heating, they will be coated with the insulation tiles. And so, oh sorry, I have written bad conductor of electricity. I should have written bad conductor of heat. Okay, just excuse my mistake. So they are a very bad conductor of heat, as I've told you, and they are very fragile, and they have a tendency to fall off. That's the major problem with them. So basically what happens is that all of these tiles are not hammered onto spacecraft. They are not bolted onto spacecraft. They are just glued onto spacecraft instead of being hammered and bolted. Okay, because they are so fragile, you cannot hammer them onto spacecraft. That's the problem with them. So you just stick them to the spacecraft with some glue, and then hope that just they don't fall off. And the main problem is that sometimes they do fall off. Sometimes you'll have debris strike on your spacecraft. Sometimes you'll have some sort of adverse event, and then your space tiles will be compromised, and it can lead to catastrophes. Sorry. So yeah, as you can see, these events. These are two events where the space tiles were damaged. So basically, this left side is the STS-27 mission. It was a secret mission by the United States Navy, and it carried some sort of secret payload. So not much documentation is actually available on this. So, but the STS-27 was flying upwards, and basically what happened is that it experienced a debris strike, and the debris strike just blew off one of the heat tiles, and the STS-27 just luckily survived, just because that the just behind this tile, they didn't had any of the critical component. Instead they had a metal bracket for metal mount behind this for some sort of component. Okay, so it was whole made out of stainless steel, and therefore when it encountered the atmospheric re-entry heat, it didn't melt it, and just barely survived the re-entry. Okay,
But at
and
5,000 it may.
Yeah.
5,000. You told that it will be temperature will be 5,000, right?
Yeah, the temperature is about 5,000 degrees Celsius, but in the shock cone, but in the shock region.
Then it
Actually,
can't
that
sustain.
when I told you that the spacecraft generates a shock region in front of it, so I actually forgot to tell you. Thank you for reminding me that the shock region is actually produced at a certain distance from the spacecraft. It isn't actually produced just like touching the material. The spacecraft rebounds all of the atoms that are hitting it, all of the atoms of the air, and the shock region that forms is actually at somewhat a distance, which is proportional to the radius of the curvature of the hitting surface. Okay, so the lesser the radius of curvature, the closer the shock boundary would be to the material of spacecraft. If you have higher radius of curvature, then that would be further away. So that's why you see that while entering, the pods will tend to have blunt noses. So blunt noses have higher radius of curvature, and therefore shock uh, the shock boundary that formed is at a higher distance from the material of spacecraft. So although the shock boundary that would have a temperature of 5,000 to 6,000 degrees Celsius, but the material that's touching the spacecraft won't have that much temperature. It would only be around 2,000 to I would say 1,200 degrees Celsius. Okay, so basically the point is that these tiles are used for operations that are at about 1,200 degrees Celsius. Okay, I told you that it's used at below 1,260 degrees Celsius. So therefore, all of the parts that these tiles are put on are expected only to experience that amount of heat. Okay, so that's not enough to melt stainless steel, right? Steel doesn't melt at 1,200 degrees Celsius, and therefore this spacecraft survived. Okay, you understand?
Yeah.
But there
But
was one other spacecraft. Yeah, yeah, please.
yeah, I think front part will be having contact with that shock region.
Front part. Yeah, right. The nose you are talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I will tell you that. Yeah, just wait. So basically, there was one other spacecraft which I'm telling you about, which actually didn't survive this sort of adverse event, and that was the Space Shuttle Columbia, which carried Kalpana Chawla, as you remember, right? So this spacecraft STS-107, which was launched in 2003, was on its ascent trajectory, and there was some sort of ice chip that fell off from this cryogenic fuel tank, the orange tank. You see, so there was some sort of ice that fell off that, and then it hit the spacecraft's structure at supersonic speeds, and just chipped off one of those tiles. And it was in such a critical position that the debris hit this spacecraft that it just made a hole inside of this tiling, and the crew just launched, and then they also had their particular operation that they were doing in space. They completed whole of that operation. They never knew that they were doomed to be dead on their return, although some of the scientists speculated that the spacecraft might not be able to survive the return journey. But I guess you have all heard the stories that they never told the crew that their spacecraft couldn't survive return journey. So
Yes.
while re-entry, the spacecraft just disintegrated due to this damage. Okay, so this is that you can see that space is very dangerous, right? You have such levels of energies involved with stuff going on that even a slight mistake, even a slight debris hit can cause just catastrophic mission failure. And then there are so much moving parts and so much things that have to go right in such a small moment of time, that it's only just a miracle that these things actually even work. Okay, so any questions? Anything? Hello, hello. Okay, I think they don't have a question, so I'll move ahead. So these are there is one more sort of this insulation that's called reinforced carbon-carbon. So just this photo that you saw of spacecraft right here. So you see the nose, the tip of the nose, and the leading edge of the wing. That you can see the tip of the nose, right? It's made of slightly different material than you see tiles. What tiles are made of? Tiles are completely black, but the tip is sort of grayish, right? And the leading edge of the wings, that's also grayish. So it's basically made out of reinforced carbon-carbon. This is a composite material, and as one of you was saying that I could not have seen his name. Sorry. So that if the radius of curvature is less, so that shock boundary would be closer to your surface, right? So one of you rightly pointed out that the shock boundary would be closer at nose and also on the leading edge of the wings, right? So it would experience much higher temperature than 1260 degrees Celsius that those tiles experienced. Okay, so very good that you saw that coming. So you use reinforced carbon-carbon at those places where the radius of curvature is very low, and therefore the shock boundary is much closer to the surface of your material, and therefore the temperature that it experiences is also much greater. Okay, so basically what reinforced carbon-carbon is that you just क्या कहता है हाँ ग्रेफाइट स्ट्रक्चर के अंदर यू यूज कार्बन फाइबर. ओके, सो इट्स सम सॉर्ट ऑफ ओके हाँ यहाँ पे लिखा ही हुआ कार्बन फाइबर reinforcement in the matrix of graphite. So you have graphite matrix and then you just reinforce with carbon fiber. So the problem with this is that it's very heavy, and if you use it too much on your spacecraft, then your spacecraft will have this redundant weight, and you don't want that. Okay, but it's very strong also, so it can it won't fall off like tiling, and it can also survive a hit or two from debris. Okay, but still at supersonic speeds the debris might cause some damage to this even this reinforced carbon-carbon. Okay, so it's only used on the leading components like the nose and the front side of the wing. Okay, so I'll proceed. Any questions on this reinforced carbon-carbon?
Yeah, can it sustain 5,000 degrees?
What? Can it?
Can it sustain 5,000 degrees temperature?
5,000 degrees Celsius, I don't know, but yeah, it can sustain from temperatures of about 3,000 degrees Celsius.
But it will be 5,000, right? The front part will be,
No,
nose part
no.
will be having 5,000.
It won't still be touching that shock boundary. The shock boundary would be at a certain distance, which is lesser than which it would have been on the other parts, but still the shock boundary won't exactly touch your material. Okay. And you know that carbon doesn't melts, right? Carbon just evaporates and reacts with stuff. So carbon has a very high melting point. It would be around 3,000 degrees Celsius. All right.
Hey, Howard,
What?
won't graphite just burn off while re-entry?
Yeah, it
Graphite
burns.
is flammable, right?
Yeah, it burns, but it doesn't burst into flames. The graphite that's very pure doesn't burst into flames because it has such a structure that only certain layers of it gets ablated and oxidized. Not the whole, not whole of the structure catches fire at once. You can also see that coal. If you have coal, then obviously coal is not graphite, but coal burns on the surface, and the internal part of that coal is not actually burning. Only the surface burns, which is the part that's exposed to the oxygen. So graphite is also similar, and it's also much more organized in comparison to coal. Only the upper layers that are in contact with the atmosphere, they oxidize and then burn off, but the lower layers just sustain there. They don't burn. All right. Should I go ahead? Hello?
Proceed.
Okay, so now there is one other sort of heat shield that's called ablative heat shields. So basically, the idea with these heat shields is that if you have some material that reacts with air or just burns off on contact with heated air, so what will happen that that burned off material will carry excess heat away from the heat shield. Okay, so that's the basic concept behind ablative heat shields. So what happens is that you use some sort of pyrogenic material. I think I read somewhere. Okay, so what pyrogenic material does is that when it gets heat up, then it produces certain sort of gases. Okay, so what happens is that if this is your heat shield, so it will get heated up on contact with the re-entry plasma, and then it will produce an air blanket around it because the pyrogenic material that this heat shield is made of, it produces gases on burning. Okay, so basically it will form a blanket of air around it, which insulates it from the front plasma shock. Okay, so this is the method that's used for ablative heat shields. There are 3 or 4 types of ablative heat shields. That's SLWA. This is super lightweight ablator. These were used in earlier designs. You have AVCOAT, which was used during Apollo missions. I don't know what the full form of this term means actually. And then you have Pika. Pika is the most modern sort of ablative heat shield that is used. It represents phenol impregnated carbon ablator. So basically, all of the modern companies like SpaceX and even the modern NASA missions like the Orion mission, they use Pika heat shield. There are some modification like Pika 3 and Pika 2. Then I thought that it wouldn't have been good to teach you about them at this stage. Okay, so basically,
मतलब
bolo.
मतलब you could go with the properties of phenol. I guess it would be a hint.
Phenols.
Phenols like the its usage in मतलब basically controlling the temperatures and all.
No, it doesn't actually controls the temperature. It just burns off.
ना मतलब
Basically,
एक
that's the
बार
main
इसकी
point.
प्रॉपर्टीज को एक बार देख सकते हैं शायद से
This
मतलब
heat
लाइक
shield.
फिनॉल की हाँ मतलब कुछ स्पेसिफिक प्रॉपर्टीज होती हैं मतलब इन डेप्थ प्रॉपर्टीज होती है आई गेस वो ये खुद से एक बार देख लेंगे मैं इसके लिए एक मटेरियल बता
Okay,
दूंगा
okay, okay, okay.
मतलब
हाँ,
ऐसा मैंने
sure,
खुद देखा
sure,
था किसी
please.
ने बताया
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल वहाँ पे पोस्ट कर देना. I'd be more than happy. ठीक है, तो
हाँ
basically,
अरे नहीं उस पे अपन जो मटेरियल्स रिलीज करेंगे उसी में डाल देंगे
okay, sure, ठीक है. So basically, the main idea is that all of these compounds that are composed of phenols, they burn and then produce some sort of gases, and that gas just forms a blanket around your spacecraft, and that protects you from the heat of re-entry. Okay, you have a sort of hexagonal structure made out of fiberglass, and all of those hexagonal holes are basically just filled with this phenol resin, and this just forms your heat shield. So this heat shield is actually Pika heat shield, and it's formed out of phenols. All right. So, and here you can see also the ablation temperature of these heat shields is much higher. It's 3900 degrees Celsius. So all of the spacecraft that this heat shield is used on are generally the spacecrafts that are more of that pod style aircraft, capsule style aircrafts like the Apollo crew capsule, which usually tend to enter Earth from higher orbits like the lunar orbits or the Martian orbits. So therefore, the higher temperature of these heat shields are also a plus for such missions. Therefore, you cannot just take your space shuttle into a lunar orbit and then re-enter, because the heat shield is not of that caliber to sustain that re-entry temperature. While these heat shields can certainly sustain that re-entry temperature. Okay, so I'll proceed with this. So also there is one more type of cooling that's called the regenerative cooling. Basically, it's very simple idea that you have a ton of cryogenic fuel lying around in your spacecraft, right? It's all liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen and all of this. So it's cool, and you want to just have that fuel in form of gas, so that your thrusters and um this rocket motors can actually burn that. You cannot burn liquid fuel. You have to have it in a gaseous form. Okay, you cannot just use liquid oxygen. You have to have atomized liquid oxygen, or liquid oxygen converted to gaseous oxygen. Liquid oxygen won't burn that well inside of an engine. So you just hit two birds with a single stone, and you just circulate your cooling fluid around your heat shield. All right, and the your coolant, your fuel would take up all of the heat of re-entry and vaporize, and also protect you from the heat of re-entry. And in the process of vaporization, it would also be will be available for you to use in your engines. Okay, so basically this sort of heat shield haven't been used till now at this stage, but these are being explored through advanced research, and maybe the next generation of spacecraft will use this sort of heat shield. So basically those spacecraft that will use their engines after re-entry, मतलब ऐसे स्पेसक्राफ्ट इस तरीके की कूलिंग को यूज करना पसंद करेंगे ऑब्वियसली, जो कि जिनके पास फ्यूल हो री एंटर करते समय, और जो कि उस फ्यूल को यूज करना चाहते हो री एंटर करने के बाद, राइट? मतलब अगर तुम एक अपोलो कैप्सूल के अंदर यूज करो ऐसी हीट शील्ड को, तो पहली बात तो तुम्हारे पास फ्यूल ही नहीं है, क्रायोजेनिक फ्यूल, जिससे तुम अपनी हीट शील्ड को ठंडा कर सको। एंड फिर तुम अगर उस क्रायोजेनिक फ्यूल को गैशियस फॉर्म में ट्रांसफर कर लेते हो, तो फिर तुम्हारे पास उसका कोई यूज नहीं है ऑब्वियसली, क्योंकि तुम वैसे भी वाटर में स्प्लैश डाउन करने वाले हो, राइट? सो एज ए स्पेसक्राफ्ट को इसकी कोई ज़रूरत नहीं। बट इफ़ यू हैव स्पेसक्राफ्ट लाइक दिस स्टारशिप, SpaceX Starship, which will re-enter a particular atmosphere, either it be Martian atmosphere or Earth atmosphere, and then it will fire its engine again and then perform a propulsive landing upon the surface of Earth, right? So उस केस में तुम्हें ऐसी heat shields चाहिए, and so basically it's a very new design, and it's just under research at this stage. Haven't been used in any of the current stages, current technology. All right. So
SpaceX don't have, for Starship they don't have heat shield, I guess.
No,
Do
they have
have?
heat shield. They have its heat shield. Starship will have heat shield. They have tested a new material that's actually Pika 3, which they will be using as their heat shield, and also they are pursuing this regenerative cooling as a heat shield right now. So I just thought that it would be cool to get it to your notice. Okay. See, you cannot just not have a heat shield, right? It's not possible. It's physically not possible to not have a heat shield. You will just cook your astronauts inside of the Starship. Even if the Starship is made up of stainless steel, and stainless steel can sustain much higher temperatures than aluminium, which the space shuttle was made out of, but still you will have crew aboard that Starship, right? And if you don't have heat shield, then they will just get cooked and vaporized inside of the Starship. You have to have some sort of cooling. It's not possible to have enter the atmosphere without heat shields. Okay.
But both all the sides of Starship look like made of only stainless steel and no heat shields.
No.
Heat shields is not visible, I guess.
No, currently in current designs, it's not visible, because the thing that they are testing right now, the Starship Hopper. I think that you have only seen the Starship Hopper. Just see the concept art of Starship. You will see that they have heat shield upon that. Okay, so basically the current thing that they are testing, the Starship Hopper, it's only meant to just hop a certain feet above the ground and then come back. It actually doesn't goes above atmosphere and then tries to re-enter the atmosphere. Okay.
I think they tested it for lower Earth orbit also, I think.
No, they haven't tested the hopper for lower Earth orbit still. If they do, then I'll tell you that they did. So Starship will will tend to utilize these systems of regenerative cooling and Pika 3 heat shields, all of that. Okay. So I'll move ahead. And what's the future of heat shields? Obviously, there is one material that you all know. It's called aerogel. You all have heard about that, right? Many of you might have.
Yes.
So
Yes.
basically, it's just silica structure that has air packed into it, and most of the composition of aerogel is normal air. It's basically 98.99% air, I think. I don't know the exact percentage. So it's a very perfect material for to be used as a heat shield, and maybe in future missions, people are planning to use aerogel as a heat shield for spacecraft, because literally it doesn't transfer any of the heat. It's a very good non-conductor of heat. Okay, and also it's light. It's just a few micrograms for a whole sheet. Okay, so now we'll move on to structural system of rockets, and I think Varun is here. Varun?
No, I guess Varun won't be able to take the class today. So we can skip this part
Okay,
at matlab at the later stage. I
okay,
guess
okay.
it could be
We'll
continued.
we'll
I don't know.
just skip
So
the part from for Varun, and we'll just go to
हाँ,
controls during it.
कंट्रोल्स
तू शेयर
या
करेगा या फिर मैं शेयरिंग
हाँ
करता?
मैं एक बार करता हूँ, देखता हूँ अगर बीच में कुछ इशू होता है तो एक बार कर लूँगा.
ओके.
लेट मी शेयर दिस स्क्रीन. हाँ एक बार शेयर स्क्रीन इनेबल कर देना. मुबशीर शेयर स्क्रीन.
हाँ, कर दिया.
Like the screen is visible. If the screen is visible.
Yes, the screen is visible.
Okay. So right. So let's proceed further. Like till now, Babashir has told about the heat shields, and like you would further you would be seeing the structural stresses as well on the rockets. But yeah, Varun is not here, so we will see it on a later part. So matlab actually you had seen very much about like mathematics and the theory part of like rocket launches. So basically, the ascents and the descents and the intermediate step, like to attain an orbit or deviate from a particular orbit. So there are various things which goes in between, and they are not so easy to assume ideal scenario in even our calculations. So matlab you must be also seeing in matlab while any rocket launches or something like that कि मतलब a particular trajectory is being predicted in earlier sense, and rocket used to follow that particular trajectory until and unless any vast devastation took place or any matlab any unexpected thing could take place. So yeah, as far like as we will proceed, we will see like what are the parameters that a person would ignore while estimating the trajectory, but actually how it affects like we will estimate matlab we will look into it. So basically there is a factor called gravity turn. Basically this is the matlab our trajectory optimization. Basically a trajectory matlab we could matlab launch several trajectory for a particular velocity. We could get a particular trajectory, but to optimize it to have a valid trajectory, like we want to launch a rocket, we want ki it should follow a particular path such that the fuel or the fuel consumption is very in optimized state, as well as several other factors are in control with the thing with the launch. So the what is the major factor here ki trajectory optimization is needed, which uses the gravity as driving force to steer the rocket in its particular trajectory. So like in any ideal scenario, when we look from Earth, we could say ki, the driving force could be basically like in rocket we had said ki the most of the factor is been seen by thrust, and like thrust controls matlab provides those specific impulse. Henceforth, like the launch has been set up and further it continues. But actually in trajectory optimization, those fuel or the propellant doesn't make such a huge major role, and we will see why. Sorry. The two major advantages that we can see that thrust can't able to provide during the trajectory, fixing a trajectory, or making a trajectory, or estimating a trajectory. Like the thrust could only provide the efficiency in accelerating the body rather being the trajectory controller. So the thrust is important because we need acceleration for the body as well, but not only acceleration, we also need to optimize a particular trajectory such that we could follow it and achieve our mission. So this would be one of the factors. Second factor is maintenance of zero angle of attack. So what is this zero angle of attack? You could obviously go through Wikipedia or something like that to have the definition. Basically, angle of attack is nothing but the reference line, initial reference, not initial, at t equals to a particular instant when you are snapshotting a picture. So at particular time, what is the position of rocket? So that becomes the reference line could exactly pass with the middle of or you could say with the axis of a rocket, and at t equals to t plus dt time, the deviation that took place from that reference line, what you have assumed at t equals to 0. So that's the angle of attack, and to maintain this zero angle of attack, there is a contribution of gravity as well as few other things as well. Like why we want this zero angle of attack? Basically, it minimizes the aerodynamic stress, and you could also think these entire thing gravity turn to be like gravity slingshots, like during the launch. So what are the things that happen during the launch? So during the launch, basically rockets initial ascent phase, as a rocket is like getting launched, like a rocket would launch at particular time, so it will attain a certain impulsive velocity, and that impulsive velocity is due to the thrust, and it tries to gain both vertical speed as well as vertical altitude without any deviation initially, until and unless there isn't any drag force, because both the forces that we are taking into consideration are acting vertically, the gravity as well as the thrust in on the initial launch time, during which gravity acts just against the thrust force on rocket, and it could be seen from balancing the forces on rocket, like it would try to minimize its vertical acceleration. And here comes an introduction to the pitch over maneuver. Basically, it's the best way to optimize the initial gravity drag, which would be experienced by this rocket. It would de-accelerate the rocket, but obviously the significance of what is the rate of those de-acceleration won't be in a great order, but it would surely de-accelerate and would contribute to 20 or 30% of the acceleration that it has provided in the initial ascent part. Which now what is so special about this pitch over maneuver? It actually tries to gimbal the engine slightly in order to it could also maintain the zero angle of thrust, but at the same time the net torque is generated such that it could leave that vertical launch and could deviate from it a bit. And several other factors at background is also there, managing those center of mass and center of pressure or max q values and all, like Mubashir has told
Okay,
you about this.
so gimbaling of engine, you all are just that the gimbaling of engine means that to just turn your engine using mechanical pistons towards one side or to other side. Okay, that's just a clarification.
Yeah. So basically in rockets, we use a particular system named as inertial guidance system, which is used for pitch over control, angle controls, the deviation or the basically the orientation or at velocity at particular time t. So you could analyze it very easily through IGS, the inertial guidance system, and get it accustomed to the rocket axis as soon as the pitch over is complete. So basically, this is very important system. You would see like in each and every rocket launch, it's the basic thing that we use. It consists of various sensors. Like it consists of the velocity sensors. It also contains the magnetometer and various other instruments. You must search for it, and at your leisure, you should try to read about this IGS. Now, like but basically when the pitch over is going, as soon as it is going to get over, again there comes the role of thrust to change the direction, and changes direction in order to attain those ideal gravity turns. Now like we have introduced this pitch over maneuver, but literally why we wanted to introduce this, why this extra stuff. So basically this could be seen like sorry it's matlab getting us it getting us deviated from the initial vertical ascent of the rocket launch. Secondly, it actually tries to particularly point correct to the orbit, or lies pace to pace with the orbit that we want to achieve. And it could be thought very deeply, but yeah, IGS also contribute towards this correct heading to orbit. And properly in deep analysis, you could find it from like articles as well. So this was the part. Now till now as you understand that pitch over maneuver comes in picture, so the rocket's velocity is not no more vertical now. So you could again think like it could come back to earth again, just like a ball, like straight launch, change the direction of launch, and just descend back to earth again. So why isn't not happening here? Any particular reason after the pitch over maneuver is over? Hello.
I have a doubt, and what is picture? I don't have clarity.
Which one?
Picture.
Basically it's the optimization technique that we used that we actually use to in against of this gravity drag. Like the thing you could visualize it in a very simple manner key. uh, let's assume at t equals to 0, the thrust force is in negative z direction, okay? And at the same times in the positive z direction, and at the same times the gravity tries to cancel that thrust force, and it's basically trying to deaccelerate the rocket, right? Are you with me?
Yeah, yeah.
And we actually don't want to deaccelerate the rocket. We wanted ki yeah, rocket should gain a particular fixed acceleration, which should be handled by this gravity drag. And what is this gravity drag? It's not nothing new term. It's like it's the same thing ki gravity trying to deaccelerate the rocket, so we given the term gravity drag. That's it. Okay. So like as the acceleration is as it started deaccelerating the rocket, so we wanted ki it should obtain a particular optimized state of acceleration, after which no further deacceleration would take place. And to handle that particular thing ki no further deacceleration should take place, we wanted to deviate from its initial vertical ascent wala part to a particular angle. And we are considering this deviation in also we are thinking at the back of the mind ki that zero angle of attack should be very much dominant. It won't be actually zero angle of attack, but yeah, it should keep pace with that also. And plus one more thing, that net torque is generated such that it could deviate from its initial vertical ascent. And this is basically the optimization of that initial gravity drag. making it like this ki it's the drag is not on the matlab vertical, and it's the other component is coming also matlab in figure. So basically it would matlab the gravity, the contribution that gravity is being giving there, it would deviate from it. So this was the pitch over maneuver. And like if you want to get more idea about it, yeah, go for the sources, or like we will provide it also like at the end of this week. So matlab I wanted just to ask ki matlab why matlab after the end of this pitch over, like matlab basically this pitch over maneuver is taking place, and like matlab a net torque has been generated and it deviates from its initial part, so at its maximum ascent, after that it could basically falls off now. Matlab why isn't falling off to earth, and it continues.
because it is reaching orbital velocity, so it can
Particular
stay.
orbital velocity,
Yeah,
and it would orbit around, right?
yeah.
It could be so simple as this as well. Any other reason? And matlab ठीक है, I don't know, like the rocket is producing a thrust as well, right? The thrust isn't broken down or something, like the thrust is not matlab not stopped after a particular interval time, like the pitch over is or at the instant when the pitch over is going to take place, and at the end of it the thrust won't gonna act matlab won't be like this, the thrust is becoming zero at a particular instant of time between the ascent and the completion of pitch over maneuver. It isn't going to happen. So the thrust is anyways acting there, so it won't be getting back, and like it would have a particular acceleration, and it would actually move in particular orbit, or matlab, it would have a certain desired thing to actually orbit around desired driving force to orbit around a certain path, or matlab around some planet or celestial bodies. Okay, so think about it, it's not so obvious. And few more thing about mission, like matlab, the rockets are not single staged, right? And in reality now we are seeing like it's made multi-stage, and purposely it's made multi-stage rockets, like matlab so how this phenomena is actually useful in maintaining the trajectory, and uh, matlab can anybody think about it, like how the trajectory is maintained as the staging goes off, matlab as the matlab first matlab as the first staged fuel burns off, so it needs staging now, and it's need to be separated. Why? To carry those matlab empty masses, and so it needs to be staged, and after that staging it needs matlab it actually takes a certain time interval to have that staging. It doesn't take instantaneously. So obviously that time interval would be very less, but yeah, that time interval is there, and after that firing has been done, and again a particular thrust has been obtained, and yeah, it continues matlab achieving a particular trajectory or perturbating the trajectory what it actually have now. So matlab the flight time for engine separation uh, is one of the factor key. We are not having the ideal trajectory what we are achieving in context ki matlab what we are designing. So let's suppose if we are designing ki it should be a parabolic type, so it won't be a parabolic type which has matlab which would be like just passing through origin, and it would be having a little shift. Let's suppose it would be having a little shift. So I am just giving you one example. It's not like parabolic path, or it's not like parabolic path in any sense, but yeah. And one more thing to keep in mind, like we are not having a continuous firing. Any special reason? Like we are having firing but not a continuous one. Anybody? I want each and everyone to think about it. Like, you shouldn't keep quiet, or else I will feel ki you aren't getting anything. So anybody?
Maybe during separation, due to conservation of momentum, the second stage, the upper stages will gain more velocity from that separation itself. So we don't
At
need to.
that point, yeah, to maintain that thing as well. And any other reason? Yeah, nice reason actually. Because the thing I am going through is not this theory. You have to matlab actually apply it to get a particular trajectory, and possibly you will see this question in assignment as well. I don't know how much you are getting it, but yeah, it's better to clear your doubt here only. We are not having the continuous firing, so that thrust wala part, how is it controlled? Matlab, you could think about it. I don't want to comment. Like, I will keep this thing as anonymous or something to think over it, and like why we are not having this continuous firing. So you can think over it. Now मतलब ठीक है, I have mentioned one thing ki like shortage of fuel in a particular time, but yeah, मतलब there are also certain things ki you should keep in mind, like why we aren't using actually the continuous file. And matlab so matlab you could also think about our planet itself. Like, we are having so thick atmosphere range, so like how difficult it would be actually to think about the initial launch from Earth. Like, there are various drag forces, vertical ascent to deviate from it, like the pitch over maneuver what we want, maintenance of zero attack angle, thrust, attainment of orbit, staging of. There are several things which is actually to be considered before we matlab launch our rocket. Like, there are certain stages, matlab it can't be taken as so simply like to launch a rocket without considering the gravity drag. Although the factor that I am saying now should be very clear to you, that the gravity drag sorry, not particularly the gravity drag, that the drag force that actually contribute to this rocket launch is not so big, at least to our particular thick atmosphere. And how you could get this, I have told you in previous assignment problem as well, to check by the ratios. Like, check by the ratios, what is the ratio of weight divided by the drag. You would find it, sorry, weight divided by drag. You would find it like, sorry, drag divided by the weight. You would find it like it's like approximately 2% and not more.
Hello.
I don't know how. Yeah.
Hello, Sunny. We should, I think, wrap up. We are getting.
Matlab, I have just one slide more.
Yeah.
So this was the part. I guess you would have gone through it. I don't know. Matlab, and if you are having doubt in that particular part, you should clear it. And I would provide you one example as well, like where you could see it. I don't know how much serious you are about this thing. But yeah, I want you all to analyze it, not going through mathematical calculations. So basically, the entire thing, that whatever I have given you in words in those 3 slides can be can be written in the mathematical formulations. Matlab, in mathematics, you could write particularly the equations. Till this part we are having this. After this part we would having this. So you could formulate it and you could get the trajectory, a proper estimate of the trajectory. So surely we will give a particular question to estimate the trajectory in your assignment. And okay, so we have talked about its ascent. So the descent part is also not easy. Like, we have talked about ascent continuing in the orbit, but we haven't talked much about the descent. So the descent part is also very important, so you have to think towards it. And but the hint is like it's similar to the ascent, like after a particular after a particular moment you want to just land, so you have to keep in the consideration कि you are maintaining the zero attack angles and all, that is the explicitly in the back of the mind. uh, the thing is कि pitch over has been attained, you should start the pitch over again the thrust force should be considered, staging and all is been over. So now you are getting the gravity drag the most, as if the planet exerts those gravity and all, if the planet or the particular landing position does not exert such gravity or gravity changes, so yeah, that part is obviously negligible. So matlab, to have a smooth landing and to have a very rough landing, you have to actually
we have
estimate it,
talked about
like
this in
how is it
re-entry.
going.
That's exactly what we talked
So
about in re-entry. That's all right.
I have seen like you have prepared few of the things about this. So yes, you must also think about it as well. And uh, yeah, possibly in next assignment you would see some problems related to this. And if uh, Mubashir, if you could give them estimates like whatever what we are going to plan for
Yeah,
the
so
next
see,
week.
first of all, some of the clarification. The runway length that I told you that it's 400 meters. It's not actually 400 meters. It's 1000 meters. Although it doesn't looks like that when we stand there, but still it's 1000 meters. And the space, the space shuttle. I told you that the landing site was Andrews Air Force Base. Sorry, I was wrong. It's actually Edwards Air Force Base. Andrews Air Force Base is also a popular this Air Force Base in United States. So I was just swayed by that name. And other than that, the Edwards Air Force Base is actually 4.5 kilometers long instead of 1.6 kilometers long. So you see that it's times longer than our airstrip at IIT Kanpur. All right. So अभी फिलहाल
Okay.
तो इतना ही है, and I'll stop the
Yeah, अभी और कुछ नहीं है. So